The Metis Tech Show.
Welcome to the Metis Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The Metis Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
So I know it's St. Patty's Day, but sort of along the same topic, I was at a Thai place this weekend, and I had a dish called drunken noodles. And I've
heard of them, never had them.
Oh my God, it's so delicious. So of course, I have to try to make this at home now, so I'm looking up how to make it. And I think drunken noodles is a combination between a Thai dish and a Japanese dish. A Chinese dish and a Thai dish. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. But it was just so good. And you got to use rice noodles, not egg noodles. And you got to use fresh rice noodles.
Okay.
Is what I think. And the secret is the sauce, because you got to use oyster sauce. You got to use 2 different soy sauces, some sugar, and then sriracha. Everybody's familiar with sriracha. You know, the little squeeze bottle with the green top? That's not real sriracha. I found out from talking to the guy who was cooking this. You got to go to an Asian store and get the real sriracha. That stuff with the green top is Americanized. It's made. It's like, you know, that commercial for salsa, New York City. You know, it's just not good. But then and then the garlic and the Thai chilies. I use serrano peppers usually when I cook. But it's just so good. It's got chicken in there. It's got onions. It's got peppers, or green onions. It's got the Thai, and this is the other thing, basil.
So is it like ramen? Is it presented
it's
like
more
ramen?
like a stir fry.
Oh, okay.
It's more like a stir fry.
So it's not a soup. It's a
it's a stir fry, but you got to use the right basil. You can't just go get basil leaves in the produce section. You got to get Thai basil. Again, you got to find an Asian market to get this stuff.
So what makes the noodles drunk?
I don't know. There's no alcohol in it whatsoever. Oh, I know. The guy did say, one of the videos I watched, he said it's because it's the kind of food you eat as you're sobering up at 1 or 2 in the morning. It's like street food.
Oh, hangover food.
Yeah, kind of like, hangover food. Not hangover food. I'm losing my buzz food.
Oh, okay. There's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference, yeah.
Yeah, I've never had drunken noodles before.
Oh, you got to try it.
Yeah.
This place, it's really good. It's in West Boylston, Massachusetts. It's called Brown Rice. It's my favorite Thai place. Food just so good. I used to get something called a Furious Trio, and it comes with 3 peppers, and I like that because it had the chicken, beef, and shrimp in it, and a bunch of stir-fried cashews. They're just a regular stir-fry with some rice and had some type of curry. And I tried, last time I was there, I tried roasted duck soup. And that was like a ramen. Not spicy, but it was just roasted. Yeah. And roasted duck has some unique
duck soup is fantastic.
Oh, my gosh, it was so good.
Yeah. That's actually funny because the other thing, too, is wasabi. If you get it in, like, you know, a sushi restaurant, wasabi is not actual wasabi.
It's horseradish.
They do, like, a horseradish kind of thing, and they dye it. And I guess the reason why is because real wasabi, it could be expensive. But the other thing is it discolors really quickly. So you don't get that nice green color that you would get from wasabi at the, like, I guess like it has to be fresh. If they try to store it, it turns brown like immediately. It's like avocado.
Yeah, it's very expensive and it's very rare. And most wasabi you get is horseradish.
Yep.
Which
tastes great.
Guess you said expensive, and it just reminded me of my anniversary dinner in Providence. Have you guys ever had caviar?
Yeah, it's not. I've had it.
Have you tried it?
Yeah, it's not.
You've
that
never
good.
tried it. I had never tried it. My wife had never tried it either.
I've had it. I don't like it.
And a waiter comes over and he's like, "Hey, just want to let you know, we had a special on caviar tonight." I was like, "Yeah, okay, no, I never had it, and I'm all set with fish eggs, And he's like, "Well, if you never had it, you gotta try it." He's like, "Well, how about a bump?" So I'm like, "Okay, what's a bump?" And he's like, "Basically, we bring out a little bit of caviar with some creme fraiche, and they put it on a chip." $15 for this bump of caviar. And yeah,
How was it? Did
it
you like
tasted like nothing at all.
yeah.
It was like I ate it and it was just like, I tasted the chip and that was it. Maybe the creme fraiche, but
Did you actively try to like chew on the?
I did, and I
row or
I
whatever?
didn't just swallow it.
Yeah.
I tried to get a flavor out of it, and I just couldn't get that profile. That I don't know what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious if you guys have ever had that.
I'd rather have cashews or something that's got flavor and it doesn't taste good.
No caviar, but cashews.
Look at the same letter sounds.
Starts the same way.
Starts the same way.
What was I gonna? Oh, oysters. You guys had oysters?
I prefer the other clams. I prefer like the cherry stones or the little necks. Oysters, I'm not a big fan of.
Okay,
Cooked,
But fried steamers or fried clams, we're talking. But
gotcha.
Like cherry stones, little look small, like little. If they're bigger, they're quahogs. Use them for chowder. But the small ones, you cut them open. Boom! I'm eating those all day long. I'll eat them raw. I don't. Those are really good.
But real quick, we both have Irish wives.
I am Irish.
And you're Irish. Okay.
Well, Welsh. But yes.
Any Irish food?
My wife, I was out of town last week, and my wife did make corned beef and cabbage. She didn't like it, of course, because it's not good. My kids didn't care for it, but she ended up.
It is so good.
She ended up getting a real fatty piece of corned beef.
Yeah.
Didn't you guys have a debate recently?
We
about-
did. We talked about this before, but it's
Everybody knows I don't like corned beef
Well,
and
that was
cabbage.
okay. You don't.
all I
like
want
it.
to say is I tried baking it and it came out 20 times better. I was unsure how it first of all, 3 hours in the oven, 2 bottles of Guinness in the bottom of the pan.
It's such a waste of beer.
Oh my goodness, it was great. You throw the onions in there, the carrots and the cabbage and potatoes and everything, and just cover it up. Throw it in the oven 3 hours, and the whole house smelled unbelievable. It was great, and you slice it, and it just broke apart, juicy, way more juicier than boiling it. Both ways are great, but this new way,
How many times better did you say it was than boiling it?
10 times.
10 times.
And I got the Guinness. I got it next to my house. It was
Oh,
next
yeah.
to my
Oh
house.
yeah, it was right next to your house.
What do you call something that's 10 times better than really putrid?
I don't know. Well, hold on a second, because what I'm curious about is I think I might be a little bit ignorant. Corned beef typically is like brined, right?
Yes.
And then is the preparation any different, or is it? Like, I don't know what the standard.
It's already done.
for
You pull
corned
it out of
beef
the
is.
package. It comes with a little packet of peppercorns and some spices and bay leaf crushed up. And what's the other? Coriander.
Coriander. Yeah, I think
Coriander
so.
is one of them, and mustard seeds.
Yeah.
So if you got to have that mix, that's what makes it. But it's already brined in all of that stuff anyway.
Oh, like when you buy it.
Yep.
Okay.
It's already brined.
I've only had it once, and it was somebody had made it for me, and I could definitely you could tell it was brined just by the
So
flavor.
you don't need to add anything to the veggies because the veggies just get all the flavor
they
from
eat it up.
from that meat.
Yeah.
But yeah, corned beef and cabbage pizza. What do you think?
Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
Goodness.
I don't know.
Maybe not the cabbage, but the corned beef.
I'm sorry. I will eat corned beef and cabbage probably this weekend coming up because we just didn't have time to cook during the week. So my wife will have her family over, her brothers and her mother, and I'll make corned beef and cabbage and go through the same yearly tirade that I do. How they boil all the flavor out of it. And I can't believe you had a famine just because they took your potatoes. You're on an island surrounded by fish. You couldn't get on a boat. You know the whole thing. That's
boy.
Yeah. But you brought up something which was shepherd's pie. And
Love
that is something
shepherd's
that
pie.
I'm looking forward to. I'm definitely gonna make some shepherd's pie.
Yeah, we've talked about that before
St.
too.
Patty's.
Steve and I make it pretty similar, but yeah, I love shepherd's pie. Although I hate to be a stickler, but technically for shepherd's pie you have to use lamb,
Yeah.
right? So I won't use lamb. I'm
Again,
not a
something
crazy
else
of
we've
lamb.
talked about. We're sorry.
Yeah. Not happening.
Yeah. So that's
Bangers and mash we haven't talked about, but we'll talk about it one day.
Yeah. Next St. Patrick's Day.
yeah.
Next year.
Yeah. So that's it. So our Irish food banter for St. Patty's Day was drunken noodles and corned beef and cabbage.
Yeah, it was a perfect mix.
Pretty much. We didn't talk anything about potatoes.
No.
Except for you talking about the blight.
Yeah,
which was offensive, by the way.
I know. I'm going to hear it from some
You know how
people.
many people I lost?
Yeah,
Family
none.
members I
you
never
don't know
met.
you don't know anybody.
Anyway, welcome to the Metis Tech Show. We have Paul Shaves.
Hey, everybody.
Bryn Raptor.
Hello.
Bryn's kind of famous now on this podcast. He's highly
When we don't have you on, people
highly
complain.
requested.
Yeah.
You know, I skip an episode, crickets. Steve skips an episode, crickets. We don't have Bryn on. When's Bryn coming back on?
That's not true. Do you
It's
remember there was a
almost
time? No, we recorded a handful of podcasts. I don't remember. I think it was for a team meeting or something. And we got so many texts saying, "But show's better with Paul. I wish Paul was on." And the weirdest thing is all of the texts were from Boston and Sewanee.
Oh, I remember
Every
that.
single
yeah.
one of them.
Yeah, then we found out we're all coming from one phone number. It was,
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
I remember that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting ready to launch a product that we've talked about it before in a past episode.
We had an intro to it.
In you know this product I think is going. I'm excited. I'm
I
very
love this
excited. We're getting it's no longer 1-to-1 mini splits, ductless, ducted units. We're doing water now, right?
Air to water.
Yes. So it's an air to water, the Ecodan residential single phase air to water heat pump system, and it is a refrigerant split system.
Yep.
So
you know what I was thinking about? I've been in this industry, I think 3 decades, probably more. Actually, more than 3 decades. And heat pumps have come a long way. Before I got into the industry, we had the energy crisis, and people were going to heat pumps and so you see the hybrid heat pump with a gas furnace. And then comes the 90s and 80s and 90s, and I'm telling people, get rid of the heat pump, just go straight gas, 90%, 96%, 93%, whatever efficiencies they were. And now the technology in the heat pumps has changed so much that it's even changed the geothermal, because for some cases it's made it so geothermal is not worth it. I got these heat pumps that work in low conditions, so it's really great. And then we had the heat pump water heaters for a while. So these are just the mini heat pump that fits on top of the water heater, and that sucks the heat out of your basement. If that's where your water heater is, you got to be careful for that. But now we have mini splits, and a mini split that's a heat pump water heater, air to water heat pump. And this stuff is just, I love this product. If I had room in my house to do it, I would put this in. But my water heater is an electric water heater in a little closet, and I don't have any more room than I do for that. And I got a heat pump already heating and cooling my house.
Yeah, I think with us being from the Northeast, the hydronics part is what's exciting about it. We've been dealing with pipe and boilers and all that good stuff, and now we're in a world where now our heat pumps are doing what a boiler would have done or what does do, and so now we're kind of blending those worlds, which for me is exciting. Cause,
me too.
To scratch the itch of hydronics.
Yeah, I love water heating. I love the hydronics. I love doing that. I kind of miss it a little bit. For me, that was always been more fun than doing air to air. And it's some of it you have to think about. So if you've done the hydronics, if you have the experience with that, this is an easy transition. If not, there's a little more you have to learn, but even then, it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
yeah, so since January, Gary Ozer out of New Jersey, both of us have probably taught about 18 classes, I think, close to that.
Been a lot.
It's just been a marathon, and we have been teaching all of our internal employees, getting everybody ready, all of our sales, tech support, and we transitioned over to our external, which we started with our DSGs, our Diamond Service Group members, and now we're into our territory managers for our distributors, and just getting everybody ready for this product. And it's a fantastic product. Like I said, it's a refrigerant split system, which we are the only ones currently that are offering a true refrigerant split system. What does that mean? That means all of the refrigerant is outside, all of the water is inside the house. So we don't have to worry about glycol, even though we can add glycol. Summer homes, things like that, we're going to add glycol. But what does the Ecodan system do? Hydronic heating, baseboard, radiant panels, radiant floor heating,
towel warmers is a
Yeah.
thing now. You get towel warmers.
Yep.
But basically, anything that you used to use or still use hot water to heat, we're just getting the hot water instead of putting a fossil fuel boiler in there, but put an asterisk there.
Yeah.
Right? But instead of putting a fossil fuel boiler in there now, it's like a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of states, like a few states and some cities and towns is saying no more fossil fuel for new construction. So
Yeah, there's a
you're
lot of that.
limited there. Yeah, it's getting more and more popular on both coasts. So now you have just a heat pump instead of a boiler there. And we can talk more about, because you can still have a boiler if that's what you want, depending on your climate. But
Right.
for the most part, that's it. Chilled water, and that's the thing. You can heat or cool the water.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things is we have some contractors in doing work on the training rooms, putting in equipment, and one of the guys is building a house. And I kind of got in his ear about, well, if you're thinking about it, do the air to water heat pump, because he wanted to put in a boiler and he's facing that situation where they're telling him, no gas. So figure out what you're going to do for heat. We started talking a little bit about the air to water, and he wanted to do in-floor radiant or underfloor radiant for everything in his house anyway. And I'm like, oh, this is a perfect setup for
Yeah.
you. And then because he
Low
lives
temp.
in Massachusetts, he qualifies for some rebate associated with that too. So to offset some of the cost of the equipment.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome.
If you've never lived in a house with radiant floors, it is the most comfortable heat that you can get.
Game changer.
Right? You wake up in the morning, you put your feet, the floor is nice and warm, and basically the whole floor of your house is the heat emitter.
Yep.
Right? And it's just so comfortable. You're actually comfortable at a much cooler temperature. Right? And the water temperature, like baseboard, the water temperatures have to get up there, but the radiant heat, you're under 100 degrees. Well, for most cases, for those floors, it's really comfortable.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Radiant.
Yeah, if I was building a house, that's the way I would go.
I had one experience with it at somebody's house. They only had it in their kitchen, but it was like a game changer. You go in the kitchen and feel the warmth on your feet. I'm like, oh man,
Yeah. Bath-
luxury.
Yeah.
You want
Bathroom.
the warmest spot in the house. See where the cat and the dog are sleeping in the wintertime, because you got the radiant floors. The pets love it.
Yep.
The pets love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so hydronic heating, chilled water, domestic hot water, which takes priority. We'll talk about that. And the ability to take a boiler and use it as a backup.
Right. So if you already have a boiler and you don't have to get rid of it, you can keep it, and especially in the colder climates, or even not in colder climates. If something goes down or something, you've always got your boiler as a backup. So if you just put a new boiler in, you don't have to rip it out. You can leave it in. I think that's pretty good too.
Yeah.
It's just an option, more options.
Yeah. Did we gloss over the chilled water part?
Yeah, kind of. We just skipped over a little bit.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know
another
how
awesome
popular
part of
the
it.
chill water side of it is going to be. I don't see why not. Right? It's just basically you're going to be running it through a fan coil unit. We don't provide the fan coil.
No.
That would be a third-party fan coil, and that's something. Before we go too far into this, I wanted everybody in my classes to understand that everything after the hydro box and the outdoor unit is a basic hydronic system. It's basic hydronics.
Yeah.
We haven't changed anything about how that water flows through the pipe. They're going to be choosing their own styles of zone valves and circulators and components and tanks.
All the same components, but the one thing I just want to mention for those people who are not familiar with hydronics or underfloor heating, we do not ever send chilled water to a floor. Right? I just want to be that clear.
Yeah.
The guys the folks that are listening that have the hydronics experience with them, of course. Sure. But for those that don't know, it's for obvious reasons. The cold water is going to sweat. It's going to condense. You don't want to do that. So chilled water is only going to go into an air handler that's designed for chilled water.
Yeah. Think drain pan.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Just like we need a drain pan in any cooling piece of equipment, it's the same thing that applies, is that most heat emitters are not going to come with a drain pan because they never sweat.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that if you're using chilled water, it's going to something with a drain pan.
I've actually seen one building that had chilled water pipes in the ceiling, but they were hanging from the ceiling. It was a commercial building. It was an old mill. And they had these pans underneath it to catch the water.
Yeah.
Right? And then the pipes would cool. The air around the pipes would have chilled water going through them. The pipes would cool, and they would sweat. And the air around the pipes would get cold, and the cold air would drop, but you had to get rid of. That's only one. That's rare. I don't think that's a very common thing.
Right. No.
So what are we offering for equipment? Basically, 3 different capacity outdoor units: a 2, a 3, and a 4-ton outdoor unit. Same indoor box, hydro box, the same size heat exchanger. What changes?
Yeah, and let's explain the Hydrobox a bit, because you still have the same outdoor unit. Looks like a mini split. Like, it looks very similar to the outdoor units we have.
Looks like a
now.
P-series unit, a little bit thicker.
And the color's a little different.
Yes.
It's more of a white than that. I don't know what the other color is called. I forget. But
Munsell white.
Munsell white. Yes. This is just, I guess, white. I don't know.
Yeah.
Which side
Is that our color?
Munsell.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
They have a paint code you can look up in the specs.
Little sidebar and digression here. When I bought my house, I painted every room a different shade of white. It was bone white, antique white. It was all kinds of things. And
alabaster.
met my wife, it had to change everything.
Yeah.
Live and learn. Anyway, it's the Hydrobox is what the outdoor unit connects to. Mm-hmm. From that Hydrobox, it's going to send either chilled or heated water to you. Tell us where. You decide where it's going to go. But all, to Steve's point, all the same components. You need expansion tanks. You need circulators or zone valves, or well, at least one circulator, but zone valves and all the other components that you need. Backflow preventers, pressure reducing valves,
Right.
things like that. Pressure relief valves, which this Hydrobox comes with one. We can talk more about those components later, but I want to make that clear for those that don't know and don't know hydronics.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So
Don't be afraid.
2, 3, and 4-ton outdoor unit, one size heat exchanger. What changes? Basically, GPM through the heat exchanger.
Yeah. Flow rate.
Larger capacity outdoor unit, higher GPM.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at operating ranges, very impressive operating ranges. In heating, minus 22 to 75. Domestic hot water, minus 22 to 107. And chilled water, 50 degrees ambient to 114. So down to minus 22 in heating. It's very impressive.
Yeah. How often does it get down to minus 22?
Right. And
You don't get it anymore.
Yellowknife, Canada, maybe.
Yeah.
obviously, conditions, outdoor air conditions are going to affect and derate the system. And every Hydrobox comes with an optional booster heater that can get wired in. So it's a 2, 4, and 6 kilowatt booster heater, very customizable on how that booster heater can step in and add that additional heat.
Yeah, so that booster heater is a 6 kilowatt, but the nice thing is, in my digging through the install manual and sitting in the class, you can configure it to be less. So it doesn't have to be a 6 kilowatt. It's always a 6 kilowatt, but you can reduce it. You can limit the capacity to 4 or 2, or you can completely disable it. Now, I've been telling people, and I don't know if you have too, Steve, but I've been telling people, wire it up, even if you don't think you're going to need it, wire it up, have it active, ready to go, just in the rare case that something happens.
Right.
Backup. Insurance.
Yep. And you can just flip a dip switch and deactivate it anytime you want.
Right.
What are some of the running temps, the water temps we're getting?
Yeah, so running temps out of the box in heating, we're looking at about 149 degrees, which is one of the high. We offer one of the highest temp air to water systems out there. It can be raised to a maximum of 158 degrees, but we have to be really careful because at that point we start losing our COP. So it's not going to be something that you want to do right out of the gate, right out of the box, and go in and crank this thing to 158 degrees. You have to ask yourself, am I sizing this job properly to 149? What the system can do on its own without changing? Because basically, when we go to 158, what we're doing is we're changing the water flow characteristics through the heat exchanger. And when we do that, now we're changing the efficiency of this unit.
Yeah, so that's a good point, which is don't necessarily design your system to 158 degrees. And the reason I say it that way is your heat emitters, whatever you choose as your heat emitter, on their spec sheets, they're going to have what your BTU per foot is based on that entering water temperature and your flow rate. So those are all things that have to be considered. And what I've found is, people are seeing 160 and they're like, oh, so it'll just run slightly longer than a boiler. And I'm like, I wouldn't plan on it being that way, what I would do is pick your design temperature, right? Whatever your leaving water temperature is, and your heat emitters have to be sized around that. Now, those spec sheets for heat emitters will post, at different water temperature what your BTU is, and that's really where the sizing comes in. Is in some retrofit applications, you may end up having to add some baseboard or some sort of heat emitter, and that's just because it was getting 180 degrees, now it's getting 149, for example. So, are there adjustments that need to be made? Do I need to add more baseboard? Things like that, as opposed to how much can I crank out of this and just let it run longer, because that's not the best way to do it.
In our business, there are contractors that will go out there and they'll take out an air handler or a gas furnace and swap it out for the same size. They don't do the load calculations. You have to do the load calcs.
Yeah.
You have to do that with every job. If you're not doing it now, you really should. And you've been lucky to get away with it if you have. So do your load calculations, figure out what you need. Now you can figure out what you're going to use for heat emitters, size it appropriately for what the BTUs, because every heat emitter has a BTU output and the water, at a certain water temperature. So design that properly and put the right size unit in there.
Yeah.
There are going to be challenges with new installations. There are going to be challenges with existing installations, and a lot more challenges with existing installations, because a lot of these houses that were built back in the day are grossly oversized. So you may have just the right amount of emitters. They were oversized back in the day. You may not have the right amount of emitters, and you have to think about those emitters were the baseboard, the radiant panels were sized and at 180 degree fluid temp.
Or weren't sized. They just put in whatever.
Right. I mean, my boss back in the day, he would walk into a bedroom and say, all right, throw 15 feet under those windows there and 6 feet in the bathroom and and he wasn't doing any load calcs.
Yeah.
And,
You have to do it because, the three of us have a lot of hydronics experience. And I think when we've had these discussions, and we had John Siegenthaler with us, we're talking to him, we all on the same page. A lot of systems, if not most boilers, are overpumped. Guys, we'll throw a 007 circulator on there, and if we use circulators instead of zone valves, another 007 on each zone, and we're pumping more water than we need to.
Yep.
So we can't just go in and slap this in there and use the old way of doing things. It's never been the right way. It's you got to size it properly. I have a room that needs X amount of BTUs. How can I get that X amount of BTUs at this water temperature? Look at my emitters. Those radiant panels are nice now, and maybe the baseboard is good. But these are the things that you have to consider. Do it right, and the people are going to be happy, and you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, size your system to what the Ecodan can do at its highest efficiency. And that's right out of the box, 149 degrees. And let's talk about chilled water. So chilled water, 41 degrees. Mm-hmm. That's an excellent temperature running through a fan coil to remove humidity. So, for instance, we have here in Southborough, a First Company air handler with dual coils, separate hot water coil, separate chilled water coil. And when I run that system in chilled water mode at 41 degrees, I'm getting anywhere from 50 to 55 degree discharge, which is perfect for removing humidity. So really excited about that. I don't know how popular the chilled water side will be with this system. I hope that a lot of people take advantage of it.
Yeah. Did we talk about buffer tanks, or is that coming?
We're going to get there. The buffer tanks are definitely a must for both modes. We'll talk about the advantages of that.
Let's talk about water flow, because that's something for those of us that have done boilers, we've never really considered. I've already said that a lot of boilers get over pumped, but water flow and water volume and the water condition are three very important things that you have to take into account now.
Yeah.
So what's the minimum and maximum water flow and water volume and so on?
So min and max water flow is basically in heating mode. Let's talk about heating mode for a second. 1.4 to 9.7 GPM. We want to stay in that realm. Anything less than 1.4 GPM, we're going to start throwing error codes for no flow. Anything above 9.7, recommended in the manual, deterioration of pipes from water flow too high of a water flow.
Yeah.
But the domestic hot water side can run at a higher GPM. It's going through an indirect tank. It's a little different how that runs. But water flow is very important. So we got three things. And Paul, we heard from our European colleagues,
Yep.
Ula from Sweden.
From Sweden, and Jose from Spain.
From Spain.
Ole.
And yes. There were three things that they talked about which make or break an installation. That was water flow. The second thing being water volume. We have to have a minimum of 15 gallons in a system at all times. And that's for a proper defrost. That's so we don't freeze the heat exchanger.
Yeah.
And
need
then
the thermal
third,
mass.
what's that?
You need the thermal mass to be
You
able
need
to
the thermal
defrost.
mass.
Right.
And you'll be shocked at, 100. How many gallons of water do you think is in 100 feet of 3/4 slant fin baseboard?
There's a way to figure that out, but it's not as much as you think it is.
2.3 gallons. I was blown away by that.
Yeah,
Like,
that's-
what?
That's crazy.
It holds nothing. So if you think your system has 15 gallons as is without buffer tanks, think again, right? And the third thing being water cleanliness.
Yeah.
So we're looking for 6.5 to 10 pH level. Not only that, but we want to remove mud,
Yes.
sediment from any existing boiler application.
You're going to want to put a magnetic filter in there, magnetic strainer in there. It's going to take all those minerals out of there and protect the unit.
Yeah.
You want to put one in that you can take out and clean and replace the core. Think of it like a filter dryer.
Yeah.
With a replaceable core, except this is for the water, because that will eat away the heat exchanger. There's a heat exchanger in this thing, and you want to save that. So, and I want to go back to Ula in Sweden and Jose in Spain. We met with them. They were here for a week. Those are great guys. They've been using this technology in Europe and this equipment in Europe for over a decade, and it's been working well. And based on their experience, that's what they tell us. If the water flow is right, if the water volume is right, and if the water condition is right, these things are working, they're lasting, and they're great, and they're running issue-free for the most part. Those are the things the three things you want to focus on. Obviously, the installation's important, and obviously the sizing it right and the load calculations, those are important too. But on the water side, get the right flow, get the right volume, and get the right water.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, too, is not only will the sediment that builds up eat away at certain components internally, but I don't know about you, but we used to have plate heat exchangers. It was a very popular boiler we used to work on called the System 2000.
Yes.
And the only way it made hot water was through a plate heat exchanger. There was an indirect storage tank, and then everything ran off this plate heat exchanger. And the amount of plate heat exchangers that would be plugged just because the channels are so tight, right? It's just thin-walled, very tight channels, tons of passes going through that plate heat exchanger that by the time, we would just dump regular, municipal water, right, over the city water coming in was not really paying attention to the quality. Over time, it just started to plug up because sediment would get trapped in there and it would start to build, and then eventually you have a wall. And so now the boiler, in our case, was overheating within a minute, and there was no heat transfer. So not only is sediment going to eat away at things, but it can cause blockages, which will stop flow, and then you run into all kinds of problems. So the other thing, too, is and you might know off the top of your head, Steve, but how many gallons are in the hydro box itself?
2.5 gallons, roughly.
Right. Yeah. So that's the other thing with, having a minimum of 15. You could have 1,000 feet of, slant fin baseboard. You're still only at about, 12 gallons. If the hydro box only holds 2.5, you still don't have the 15 gallons required.
Right. Exactly.
So
There's a way to fix that. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And we're not just trying to protect the heat exchanger. We're trying to prevent short cycling. And that's another reason for the buffer tank. It's a reservoir of stored water, a thermal battery, but it's going to prevent that short cycling, and it's going to prevent that compressor from taking a beating, basically.
So let's move on to the wiring. Do we wire this the same way we do a current mini split?
Just like a P series or an M series.
Like a
S1,
P
S2,
series.
S3.
208, 230 outside?
208, 230 from the breaker panel to the outdoor unit, L1, L2 and ground, and then from S1, S2, S3 to the hydro box, S1, S2, S3. And that voltage, that 208, is basically responsible for powering our FTC, our flow temperature control circuit board, and our circulator inside of the hydro box. The booster heater, on the other hand, will be powered separately. And again, that's an option. but it's an additional 35 amp breaker. So that's going to be a challenge, I think, for a lot of homes that are limited on breaker space, because think about 2, the 3, and the 4 ton outdoor unit. That's a 30, a 35, and a 40 amp breaker.
Yeah.
So if you have a 4 ton unit, that's a 40 amp breaker. You need a 35 amp breaker for the booster heater. You know, you got 75 amps right there worth of breaker space.
Yeah.
So that may be an issue in some homes, maybe not. But
Well, it's something you have to be aware of when you're going to
Yeah.
go out and sell this and price it out. You need to look at that. But that's true with anything.
right.
You know, again, a war story. I had only one house that I've ever seen. We went in there. We did everything, well, almost everything correct. When we got there to go, the electrician got there to go wire it. He says, I've only got 120 volts in this house. Like, what? Only one house I've ever seen. The house was built in the 40s, and it didn't have 210 coming in. It had 115 volts coming in.
Wow.
And I've never seen that before. And our sales guy who went out there to look at it, he sees the panel. He sees some spaces available.
Plenty of room.
Yeah, plenty of room. You know, I think this was actually fuses, the old fuses in there. But he figured, we'll put a little sub panel here, then put the breaker right there. And now they got to bring in. Luckily, it was the power company's responsibility to do that, so it didn't cost the consumer any money. But
No, that's good.
But those are part of the things you have to look at. You have to make sure you got enough service for what you're putting in.
Well, that's the thing is I've gotten some feedback since I started talking about it with contractors in class and things like that. And a lot of them are saying that they see a lot more 200 amp compared to how it used to be. I mean, I was used to 100 amp. I was also in Vermont.
Yeah.
So not a whole lot of need for things like air conditioning.
A lot of the houses in this area that
100
are
amp.
built in the 50s and 60s was 60 amps. Some of them were 60 because not everything was electric. There was a lot of fossil fuels. Well, why do you need more than that? But yeah, I think 200 is pretty much the standard right now.
Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
and then we have some output. So we got the outdoors wired the same. S1, S2, S3 goes to the hydro box. And now this hydro box has some outputs. So let's talk about those.
Yeah, so basically our FTC, our flow temperature control board, we have an inputs terminal block section and an outputs terminal block section. The inputs are green along the bottom. That's where our thermostats and our thermistors plug into. And we also have some control logic on the inputs as well. The outputs terminal blocks on the left are orange, and these are Wago blocks, by the way. If you're familiar with Wago blocks, you need a tool or a screwdriver to push on a tab, open up some jaws, stick your wire in, and it clamps the wire in place. So no screw terminals, so these blocks like stranded wire. They don't like solid wire that much, so you got to keep that in mind. But what we're dealing with here is European technology.
Yeah.
Okay, and I did some research and said, what are our competitors doing? Are they doing something different? And basically, they're doing the same thing we're doing. 230 volt outputs, which is really not what we're used to here in the Northeast, in the United States, for that matter.
Yeah.
We're used to 24 volt control logic. We're not going to be looking for 230 volt circulators on the shelf at Bell Simons or Granite Group or your local distributor. We're probably going to have to order those if we wanted to use that voltage circulator. We're not going to be using 230 volt zone valves, right? That's not typical. And the thermostat inputs that we're tying our thermostats into, basically just a dry contact. We're just opening and closing for an on-off command.
Right.
So what kind of thermostat are we stuck with using? Now, let's go back a second. The Hydro Box can handle 2 zones on its own, 2 zones of heating, 2 zones of cooling. Yeah. But we can only plug thermostats directly to those blocks, and those have to be battery-operated thermostats, or if you're old like me, T87s with mercury in them, which they don't make those anymore, right? So we're going to be using some kind of digital thermostat. There's a better way, and that's going to be zone management.
Right.
Zone management controllers, tools like Taco and Grundfos. Taco Zone Controller is a fantastic way to manage multiple thermostats, multiple zone valves, and it keeps everything at 110 volts and 24 volt logic.
Right. And just to be clear, with these 230 volt outputs, even if you had a 230 volt pump, a circulator, you're not going to go right out of these outputs and go to the circulator directly. You would want to go to a relay and use that. So that's important.
That's a good point, because most of these outputs are rated at 1 amp.
Right. So anything that's over 1 amp, you're going to need to supply it from another power source anyway, which means a relay. So now relays and transformers are now probably the way to get things done.
Right. And guess what? Takeo Zone Controller has all the relays and transformers and everything built in. So again, it's a great way to manage all of those zones separately.
Yeah.
And it is a way to power thermostats too.
Right.
And that's the other benefit is, with us having only dry contacts, you have two options. And let's say you wanted a smart thermostat. A lot of those smart thermostats do not work battery powered.
Right. Good point.
So you're going to be putting in a transformer literally just to power the thermostat and then use your, R&W or whatever to actually, call in the Ecodan. Well, with the zone controller, they have a common terminal. You're able to actually power your thermostat via the control board.
Yeah, and we're saying Takeo, the Takeo controller. That's the one that we found that we used. And we're not saying you have to use Takeo because there are other manufacturers that make this. That's just the one that we found. They're a local company. We actually, I think all three of us know somebody there.
Yeah.
We've all talked to them. Look, HVAC's a small world.
They're out of Rhode Island.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they're right down the street. They're right next to Steve's house.
Yeah, they're right next to Steve's house.
Yes.
Listen, not all of our listeners are next to Steve's house.
Yes. Well, I'd be surprised how many, though. Feel free to stop by. He'll make you some corned beef.
Yeah, definitely. We're also offering an application guide.
I love that application.
So this application guide is going to be a game changer because the contractor will be able to look at a flow chart, and depending on whether or not that application needs domestic hot water, heating, cooling, maybe they're just doing heating and domestic hot water. You look at your flow chart, you follow it down. It's going to say use this application guide. You flip to that page. There's the piping diagram. There's your dip switch settings. There's all the configuration that you need and how to wire it, how to set it,
how to pipe it,
and get that job installed correctly. I love the fact that we came out with that, and we're helping the contractors figure out what their application is. But not only that, but their dip switch settings, because dip switch is a big thing with this product.
It tells you how many buffer tanks you need, or if you need a buffer tank. Which I'm going to go on the record as saying I always recommend buffer tanks. And I would not. I think there's one or two options on the application guide that make it an optional, that say you don't have to have a buffer tank. But I'm sorry, if I'm installing it, I'm always going to use a buffer tank. There's more advantages to it than not having one, I think.
Well, and that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, which is that it's going to be kind of challenging to get your 15 gallons without a buffer tank.
Right.
So, in my opinion, plan on it. Right? Plan on using a buffer tank, because otherwise you're going to have to make calculations on how much piping is in this space, in this home, and does it get me up to that 15 gallons? And I don't know how big of a home you're going to get. That's only 2 zones. Right, you can get away with just having a single buffer, or without a buffer tank. I just don't think it's going to happen very often. Yeah. So I would intend and plan in general to use a buffer tank just to get to that 15 gallons.
And the cool thing that we did here in our training center is we used 2 buffer tanks, one for heating and one for cooling. The outdoor unit can only be in one mode at a time. It's either in heating or it's in cooling mode, and that's it.
That's not a VRF?
No. Nothing changes that.
I didn't see a branch controller.
Nothing changes that. But the cool thing that we did here, we were in heating, and then Steve switched it to cooling for the hydro, the first company hydro air handler.
Yep.
And it was still heating because of the heat in the buffer tank, and it was still cooling because of whatever. When we switched modes, for a while there, and it was a long while.
Yeah, it was in chilled water mode, but it was able to pull hot water from the buffer tank.
From the buffer tank, enough for what it needed then there. So you can actually, for a period of time, and I don't know what that period of time is because we're in a training room here. We didn't have anybody taking a shower. We actually did install a little vanity in the training room so we could turn on the faucet so people can feel the hot water. And that water comes out of there plenty hot.
Yeah.
But for in the shoulder season, for a short period of time, and it depends on a lot of things, I'm not going to say what it is, but you will be able to heat and cool at the same time for a short time.
Yeah, well, the other thing with that too is think about it. If you are in a situation where you're using both heated and chilled water, you probably are in a shoulder season. And I know the controller on the Ecodan, the Hydrobox, has the ability to set up weather compensation curves.
Yes.
You can still heat when it's mild out. Let's say it's 55 degrees outside, but you have a room that you want to heat. You don't really need the 149 degree water to heat that space. You may be able to get away with a less or a lower water temperature. So in this case, it could be in chilled water mode and it's pulling just from the reserve of the buffer tank.
Yep.
It may not be 149 degrees, but it'll probably still heat the space just because temperatures are mild and you don't need that full 149 to actually heat the space. And we used to do that all the time with boilers. Taco had this controller. I forget what they called it. But it was one of those, warm weather shutdown.
A heating curve.
Yeah,
basically.
it was called warm weather shutdown,
Yep.
WWSD. It was this little controller that would basically look at the outdoor ambient temperature and was controlling when it actually kicked the boiler on based on what they wanted for a supply water temp. So it was, a way to control,
Right.
efficiency, right? We don't have to burn the fossil fuel if we've still got 160 degree storage in the boiler. Kind of a similar situation here with the buffer tank.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the dip switches that we want people to be aware of.
Yeah. So right off the bat, let's look at SW1-1. That's our boiler dip switch. And from the factory, it is off, meaning it's telling that board that there's no boiler being
backup.
used as a backup. So what does that mean? Well, at the end of the day, all it's looking for is a thermistor. So if it's off, it's not looking for a boiler thermistor, meaning the thermistor that is plugged into the Hydrobox, sensing supply boiler temperature. So picture this, dip switch gets left on or flipped on for some reason, but we're not using a boiler and no one connected a thermistor. What's going to happen? It's going to throw a thermistor error.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that could be, a dip switch that we have to make sure we're looking at all of our dip switches, make sure they're set correctly. Second one.
Well, hold on a minute.
I was going to say,
I
did want to ask one other additional question specifically with the boiler is it does also control whether or not the outputs to the boiler, the end switch output from the boiler, that would it affect that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So it's going to close a set of contacts. If that dip switch is on, saying it does have a boiler, we're using a boiler backup, we've integrated a boiler into the system, it's going to open and close a set of contacts that would go back to, say, TT. I'm dating myself now. TT on a primary controller, or R&W. We're just bringing that boiler on. And basically, that boiler is being set by three different things. The most popular that will bring the boiler on is economic balance point.
Right.
That's going to be an outdoor air temperature that we set, and the heat pump shuts off, boiler takes over. There's also another way to control the boiler, and that's by cost. Electrical costs. This would be data that you would have to input into the interface, into the controller on the Hydrobox.
What you're paying per therm
Yes.
of gas for the boiler, if it's an oil boiler, what you're paying per gallon of oil, and then what you're paying for kilowatt hour of electricity. Those are the things you need to know.
Right.
So I think, and then the third one would be CO2 level. These are things that I'm so unfamiliar with in the boiler world, but this would be data that would have to be input again into the controller where you're monitoring some type of CO2 usage or what that boiler does versus electrical CO2.
Okay. Sure.
That's probably a requirement.
Again, something that's out of my...
It's probably a requirement in some European countries that has that, where they want to monitor that. But I want to go back to the thermistors, because when we opened up the Hydrobox unit, when we got it here, there must have been, I'm going to say, a bazillion thermistors in that thing.
Four.
Four. Okay.
It
Was this four?
comes with four.
I was close, because nobody really knows what a bazillion is.
Yes.
Anyway.
You do.
You were close, but not so close. But four thermistors, and basically that's a supply and return thermistor for the buffer tank. If you want to use them, it's optional.
Which you should.
And then the other two are mandatory. If you're using domestic hot water, you need to use the domestic hot water thermistor. That's what turns that domestic hot water on and off. The system to produce hot water for the domestic hot water. And then the other one, if you have a backup boiler, you have to use the backup boiler thermistor that's plugged in. into the input side of the board. So dip switch.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dip switch 1-3 with a domestic hot water tank or without a domestic hot water tank. It comes from the factory without domestic hot water tank, so the switch is set to off. If you're using domestic hot water, which is priority, by the way, that's going to take priority over the heating and chilled water. You're going to flip that dip switch on if you have a domestic hot water tank. And again, it's looking for a thermistor at that point.
And the reason it's giving priority to hot water is you don't want to lose the hot water if you're in the shower, but you can lose heat for a little while.
Yeah.
It'll bounce back. But
Yeah.
Again, another benefit of having a buffer tank, right?
Yep.
So buffer tanks, buy them in 10 gallon all the way to 500 gallon. You wouldn't have 500 gallon tanks on this system, but you can have a large enough buffer tank that if you're concerned about having that thermal battery, that mass, so that you can send it to emitters while you're making domestic hot water, that's key.
I'm just gonna say it again. I would always use a buffer tank on every installation if it were me. Period.
Yeah. And again, helps with preventing short cycling. We don't want our compressor taking a beating. So I'm not going to go over every single dip switch in here, but you get the point. And I'll just go over another one that's pretty cool. 1-5 booster heater, with or without. I can leave that off if I don't have it wired, or if maybe I got it wired and I just want to leave it off and see how the system will do without a booster heater. I always have that option of flipping that on. And then customizing the booster heater. Do I want it to just back up heating, or do I want it to back up heating and domestic hot water? I think for me, if I was to install this in my house, that booster heater is getting wired.
Yeah, me too.
It's definitely getting wired.
And if you're going to go install one of these, don't listen to this podcast to figure out how to install it.
Come to class.
Yeah, come to class. Read the fantastic manual, RTFM. There's a lot of information there, and I just wanted to put out here, we are in the process. We're a little behind. No excuses, but we're short-staffed, and we got a lot of things, a lot of balls in the air right now. But we will have some e-learning on this. These classes are going to be public. We only have them at 2 locations right now, but we'll be installing more. But there'll be some e-learning out there that, again, we got to upload that, and it's coming. It's coming fairly soon. So, but let's talk about what the control board does, because what'd you call it? An FTC?
An FTC, flow temperature control.
That's a nice control. That thing is pretty neat.
Yes. So it controls all functions of the Ecodan. It's basically the brain for the Ecodan. Provides inputs and outputs. All the thermistors connect to the input side. And I love this. It has a built-in micro SD card. So what is that SD card doing for us? Number one, it's saving all of the parameters that you set up on the controller on the face of the Hydro box, which you didn't talk much about. But it's basically, if you're familiar with our Touch MA, they took one of our Touch MAs and they mounted it to the front of this Hydro box, but they loaded it with a very intuitive, just robust controller that I love. It's all touch screen and tons of service menus in it. I just love this controller. I think it's one of the best ones we've come up with yet. And basically all of those settings that you initially set with that controller could be saved onto the micro SD card, along with flow temperatures, flow readings and gallons per minute, liters per minute. All of that information gets saved on the micro SD card. What does that do for the contractor? If the contractor has like a cookie cutter type setup where they have a bunch of the same installations going in, they can make copies of those micro SD cards, pop them into the control board, power it up, and now they don't have to go into the controller and reset all of those settings at preset.
So if
it's a 3-ton unit, my gallons per minute is this. Am I using a weather compensation curve? Am I using fluid temperature to turn system on and off? Does it have a buffer tank? Does it have a boiler? Does it have domestic hot water? All of that information is saved and it goes into the next unit.
So if I'm doing an apartment building, or if I'm doing multiple homes in a development, or if I'm doing multiple systems in a home,
yep,
that's easy. instead of going through and entering all this manually, just take a new SD card, copy it, and just
That's it.
Load it up, plug
It's
it in.
also great just in general because, a contractor may decide how they want to apply the Ecodan, and that's how they do it across the board. And at least, even if they have to make small changes afterwards, they have the platform. Like you said, that wall control or that controller on the Hydro Box has so many customizable features that to go through it takes time. You have to take your time and go through every screen and make sure that the system's configured the way you want it to be. But if you've already made a decision that this is kind of how we want to apply it, you can drop it in, make your slight changes, and then move on with life, as opposed to having to start from square one every single time that you install a system.
Good point.
So we're offering classes. We're offering e-learnings. Paul, can you guide them to where they can find that stuff?
No.
Yeah. So I say yes, you can.
Yes, I can. Yeah, go ahead, Bryn.
Well, it's on Mitsubishi Comfort. You don't necessarily need a login for the contractor portal. You can access it as just a guest for access to some of the e-learnings. Our e-learnings typically are free. They have no cost.
Some of the e-learnings you don't have to log in to. So I'm glad you brought that. You just reminded me. You don't have to log in to see what's available for training. And there's one or two e-learnings that you can take without logging in or creating an account. But for the most part, you need to create an account.
Yep.
You need to create an account. You go into the system. The e-learnings are all free. We don't charge for those. If you want to come to the class, there is a fee for that. Don't ask me what it is because I don't remember. But the important thing is that there's another thing, and it's a sidebar to all of this. We're trying to make it in a future state where it's easier to sign up for the classes and to enter attendance in our systems and so on. And one of the things that we struggle with is contractors will go to a class, whether it's one of our locations or one of our MATC, the distributor locations, is, I forgot my password. I don't know what email I used. Because we all have 5 or 6 emails or more. I just found out I have like 7 or 9. I didn't even know I had. So we're asking you to create a PIN number. So that PIN number is going to be unique to you. It's a first letter of your first name, first 3 letters of your last name, your birth month, and your birthday. And you put that information in, and that's your PIN. So you go to log in the next time that's your PIN. And hopefully within the next few months, if you go to a class, you just sign up with that PIN. You'll scan the QR code, you put the PIN in there, and you're enrolled in the class automatically. So, and anything that we do, like, hey, if there's something you have to do after the class, here's your certificate, log in, use the PIN, can get it. So there will be a field when you log in for that to ask if that, but please go ahead. We just launched this maybe 2 weeks ago, and already we got like 400 or 500 people.
Yeah, and the hurdle that we had before is that a lot of times the contractor themselves, the attendee for the class, wasn't the one signing themselves up. So, a company email was provided, and so there was a hard time tracking certificates. And, a lot of times we'd have students who were like, hey, how can I access my certificate? And it was like, you just log into your contractor portal. And they're like, I don't even know what that is. So this gives them more control and hopefully gives them the opportunity to engage more with the contractor portal, getting some of those e-learnings and all that stuff. What I would recommend just in general, before you go installing an Ecodan, will attend the e-learning or attend an in-person class.
Yes.
The e-learning should be up within a matter of weeks. I'm in the process of finishing it now, so it should be up within a matter of weeks, but I personally wouldn't try going through this installation without going to the class first. Get yourself into a class, get yourself into the e-learning, complete it. It's going to come with assessments so we can gauge how much is being absorbed, but you got to do those things before you think about installing this, particularly if you have no or little hydronics experience.
Yep. And if you live right next to a Chick-fil-A, we'll send Ed Blair to your house to help you with the control.
Is that it?
I think that's it. Anything else we missed?
I think we could probably do a whole nother episode on controller.
Yes.
And what we can do is we can open up the app and kind of show some of what goes on in that. There's like a simulator app. And
we can make that a video episode for those who want to watch it on the YouTube. We can have them actually go in there.
Stream the website right onto the,
Absolutely.
Should we do a live stream show?
at some point.
Well, I'm not.
We're going to have to do it at midnight so Nick can watch.
Yeah, I don't want to mention names, but you know, there are some people who are on the show that say things they shouldn't say, and it has to be edited out.
Right.
You know, and Bryn does a good job editing
I try.
Steve out when he does those things.
All right. So tomorrow, St. Patrick's Day. You guys wearing green
Well,
tomorrow?
by the
Or
time
Wednesday,
this is
sorry.
out, by the time this episode is out, St. Patrick's Day will be yesterday.
But sure.
Yes, because this is listen. We just recording that it's Monday. Today is what, the 16th for us, but by the time this gets released, St. Patty's Day will be yesterday.
Yeah.
I am not gonna cook anything for St. Patty's Day during the week. We're gonna celebrate it on the next weekend. My mother-in-law is coming over. One of my mother-in-laws is coming over, and my two brother-in-laws.
Yeah. Awesome. One thing that I just have to do, because my son has been asking me nonstop every single weekend I have him. He says, "Hey, on the podcast, can you shout me out
Yes.
and say hello to Lachlan?" So can we all just say hi
yes.
to Lachlan?
Hi,
Really quick?
Lachlan.
Hey, what's
Love
up,
you, buddy.
Lachlan?
But yeah, he's mentioned it. We did an episode of the Lockie Tech Show. My son's name's Lachlan. We made an episode of the Lockie Tech Show, and he wanted to post it, and I'm like, he's only 6. So I'm like, we're not posting that anywhere.
no.
But he asked me every weekend I have him, how many views do we have? How many views do we have? And then the other question he asks is, can you say hello to me on the podcast? So I just had to get that out of the way.
That's good.
So yeah, he'll appreciate it. He'll be all excited.
That's nice.
Convinced he's famous.
He is now.
Yeah.
Lachlan, just be careful all the fan mail you're going to get. Screen it. Have somebody else do it for you. You know,
Yeah, get an agent.
to-
Probably
101 countries are listening to you right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Listening to us.
It's very
Say
true.
your name.
Yeah, that's true. 100. Yeah, that's more than half the countries in the world.
Wow.
Because I think there's only 190 or 192
Yeah.
countries in the world. So more than half the world is listening to us, which boggles my mind.
Yeah. It is pretty crazy.
Yeah.